I'm Elizabeth with GrowthWheel, and Dave is with us. And if you want to turn on your camera, it's great to see everybody. And love also if you can make sure you rename yourself, as we always do, with your full name and your location, so we can see where everyone is from as we get up and running today.
Yes, and good to see many familiar faces. Rhea calling in from Ohio, Bernard from Hawaii, of course, Giovanni from Jamaica, Paul from Oregon, and we got Dylan from Virginia and Iowa, Wiki from Illinois, and also Stephen from Ohio, and Minerva George, you are from, remind me, we'll see it in a minute and then I'll remember very clearly. So yeah, good to see everybody joining here this afternoon. I'm gonna kick us off for today and share my screen right here as we're going to talk about using GrowthWheel for practical strategy and execution. With GrowthWheel, we always want things to be practical, and we always focus on making decisions and taking action. We're going to have here the webinar 45 to 60 minutes together, and we will also have some case study time. So when we're finished, you can hang out, and if you want to discuss some of the practical implications of what we talked about with your clients, you can do that. We will cover today some thoughts about what strategy is in a practical sense. Maybe you feel like us that the word strategy can be overused or misused. It can be confusing to clients. It may set expectations for something that it's not. We're going to talk about when strategy is needed and when it's not. There are certain places in the life cycle where you need certain strategies, and then there are other times in the life cycle where you might need others. We're going to talk a bit about using GrowthWheel for business model selection. So maybe you already use business model canvas to help someone about the strategic choice they have on selecting a business model. Well, we can use GrowthWheel for that as well, or we can use the two together. We're going to talk about GrowthWheel for different focus area strategies. So just a strategy for sales, just a strategy for HR, and we're going to talk about GrowthWheel for different growth scenarios, 7 different ways to grow a company, different strategies, if you like, and how to work with them. We want to give a special welcome to this webinar for people who are not yet GrowthWheel certified. I'm actually not sure if we have any, but we've started to open up and make them open for the public, so people who are curious about GrowthWheel can come in and join them. So for those who might be joining us for the first time, GrowthWheel offers 3 things. We have a training program for business advisors, we have a visual business tool stack, and we have a software platform so you can collaborate with clients in the cloud. We're used by incubators, small business development centers, academic institutions, investors, lenders, and professional service providers, and we have trained and certified more than 3,700 business advisors in 2008, of which we have already 19 on the call here today. We are used in 49 states in the US, and there are 12 state networks in the SBDC world who implemented GrowthWheel statewide. We have lots of women business centers, and around the world we work with networks similar to America's SBDCs, CEDA in Norway. We work with CEDA in South Africa, the growth houses in Denmark, and others as well. GrowthWheel is now used in 67 countries around the world, and we are thrilled to see also today having people calling in from many different places. And with that, Elizabeth, I'm going to hand it over to you to answer this question. What is strategy really, and what is it not?
Absolutely. So, all right, let me go ahead and share my screen then, and let's talk about that. So let me get that up and running. And thanks again for those of you that have your cameras on so I can see everybody. That's always nice. And let's talk about that. What is strategy and what is strategy not? And so we want to talk about that because sometimes strategy can be kind of this, people can kind of have a problem with the word strategy. It can be this MBA concept, you know, your strategy books from school, but maybe it's difficult to apply to a client. So how do we apply strategy and what is strategy? Well, we talked about, you know, a strategy equal a business plan, and you know, is that really what we're looking at here? And we know that there's challenges there. Some of the challenges are that we know our clients don't really enjoy writing those business plans, but probably even just as sad is no one wants to read them either. So either way, it's not fun to write and it's not fun to read for most clients. So it's very time consuming and not necessarily a really productive process. So they tend to read it and then maybe they don't even trust it and they go, okay, thanks. Now why don't you tell me about your business? So some of the problems with the business plans can be that they are kind of fiction. They're predicting a future that really is difficult to know what's going to happen 3-5 years down the road. I mean, think about back in 2019, could anyone have predicted what would have happened with COVID-19 and what would have happened to all of our clients? It can be a distraction from the real work of actually creating the business. And so instead they're trying to write this document. And also a lot of my clients, after they wrote it and maybe they got their loan, I'd say, okay, are you hitting those milestones you said you were going to do? You're going to hit? And they go, yeah, I wrote it, I got the loan and I put it on the shelf and I've never looked at it again. So it can be static and it's not really part of a daily process for the clients. So strategy is something other than a comprehensive document. It doesn't have to be in the shape and form of a document. But also, it's not just goals. Your clients may have goals, but that's not really strategy. Strategy is more the how are they going to get there. It's not just long-term planning. Some plans may not be strategic. So they can have plans or have a long-term perspective, but not necessarily be a strategic plan. And it's not just positioning. So there's more to it than just your client's position in the market. So what is strategy if it's not all of that? Well, we're going to take some words from another famous person. Michael Porter from the Harvard Business School says, it's really the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. So one of the things when you're talking to your clients that you may want to chat with them about is really using the words strategic choice. So when you work with your clients, if you use that term, it's similar to how in GrowthWheel we talk about, a 360-degree view. We talk about focus areas, making decisions, and taking action with our clients. So it's just what is the strategic choice you have in this area? So you can ask your clients, what strategic choices are you facing right now? And as we talk about that with our clients, they don't have to be long-term. Maybe your client's just deciding, how do we want to price things? Do we want to increase prices right now? Do we want to start exporting or not? So it could be short-term discussions or strategic choices they have. It doesn't necessarily have to include goals. So your clients can make a strategic choice without having a specific goal tied to it. Your client may decide to start exporting, but that doesn't mean they have a goal for revenue associated with exporting. And it doesn't have to be fixed. They can always make another choice. So it's not a fixed long-term strategy, and it doesn't have to be comprehensive. It doesn't have to cover everything. So we can kind of define it here and say a strategic choice is really those decisions that involve a choice between alternative ways of running and growing the business. So we like that phrase, using strategic choice as kind of our GrowthWheel language and approach to strategic planning. And, we've heard us say, to our clients, make decisions and take action, but you can also talk to your clients and say, make strategic decisions and then take action. So that's kind of a warm up on this topic. And we can take a look at, those decision-making on many different levels. So here's decisions your client may be making about pricing. So at the top, you've got a strategic decision about, do they want to introduce a freemium model? Do they want to have differentiated pricing for different segments? Versus a tactical decision, which is like, okay, do we want to double our price, cut the price, introduce new fees? Or a more operational decision at the bottom and say, okay, do we want to change our discount system? So talking to our clients and helping them to kind of see those strategic decisions that may be more high level and helping them to see that. And of course, we talk to our clients. Sometimes they need to make those decisions before they can take action. But we can help our clients by adding those strategic choices onto the 30, 60, 90-day plan for them, put them onto a timeline so that they can see what's coming up and what they need to be considering. And using those GrowthWheel decision sheets really as a checklist for those strategic choices. So they see all those options, you can brainstorm with them and think through that. And David, I think you're going to talk a little bit about some of our practical examples using GrowthWheel.
Yeah, we can keep your slide deck rolling. Yeah, let's take some practical examples, and we can best talk about ourselves. So let's look at some of the strategic choices that GrowthWheel has been taking. One would be about customer segments, and if you go to the next slide first, actually, Elizabeth, there, you know this decision sheet. Maybe you've been using it with your clients when you have a conversation about what are the most attractive business segments to focus on. And you know this decision sheet helps you kind of list a number of geographic segments, maybe your town, the town over, maybe another state, maybe another country. And when you look at all those, which ones do you choose? Or you can segment by industry. Maybe you're looking at retail or anything else, and the decision sheet helps with that choice that you may call a strategic choice. So for GrowthWheel, as you may already know, we made very early, 12 years ago, the strategic choice that we would focus mainly on public funded business services. So the likes of SBDCs in the United States, government-funded programs, and others. We would have a more reactive sales approach to consulting companies, venture funds, banks, accountants, and universities. Now we have those as clients, and they get exactly the same service as anybody else. Our product works for them as anybody else. It's just our choice that we focus on the other kinds of customers. And many of the, by the way, consulting companies that are with us, like you, Ria, in Ohio, actually got to know us when someone was with an SBDC or another program, and then later went out and started their own consulting company. So that's a very clear example for us. People have asked us many times, why don't you go into those other segments? And it's just a strategic choice that we are really strong, we think, in the market with the government program. So that became our focus. Yeah. Another example is our marketplace. And you may also know the story, or remember the story, that originally we started in Denmark. And one thing about Denmark that is very different from the United States is that the market is so small. There's 5-6 million people, so you're kind of born global in Denmark. You know that there's just not a market at home if you want to do anything of any significance. So it's natural to kind of look at the world map. And if we look at that world map slide again, that decision sheet, it's actually from our export tool. So that's one of our advanced tools that you can also get. When you show this to a client, and you can use any map, we just made a decision sheet for it, you start realizing that there are some markets that might be more obvious than you think. Let's say you're from an English-speaking country like most of us, I think, here today. Well, you have markets in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. You certainly have the Caribbeans. Outside the US, Canada. You have the United Kingdom. You have Ireland. But not only that, India. And even African countries, the business language is English. So if you're selling a product, you don't have a language barrier for going into those countries. And of course, in many other countries, they would speak English anyway. But that's the native business language in all these countries. So if you jump back to our choice, what we decided was to have a very active sales approach in Denmark, where we were from originally. I moved to the United States and started a subsidiary company here in 2008. Later, we started a subsidiary company in Canada, where Daniela, by the way, who's with us, is our first employee now. We have a subsidiary company in South Africa, and we don't even have Norway on the list, where we also have a subsidiary today. So we've chosen that if we are serious about a market, we establish a local business. Giovanni, maybe one day we will have GrowthWheel Jamaica, Incorporated, Limited, I guess it's called in Jamaica.
That would be great. That would be great.
And we look forward to the day. So as soon as a market gets a certain significance, and actually Jamaica is coming on very large with GrowthWheel these weeks, many more people are signed up, then we may take that choice. So that's a marketplace we've chosen. The rest of the world has been somewhat reactive. People call us from Thailand, and they will become a client as well. But we don't actively pursue those markets. We're just open for business. Another thing we've done is, of course, translate GrowthWheel into 13 languages. Another strategic choice. So we were more open for business for so many countries, including the Middle East, where we are increasingly also getting more countries, as we are having GrowthWheel available in Arabic now. So yeah, that has been our choice.
Yeah. We can also take a look at choices with product portfolio.
Yeah, and you know the product portfolio, there are certain things we decided to produce. We have our 4 core tools, the 360 screening, we have the decision sheets, the frameworks, the 36 9-day plan. We made advanced tools, and we increased our platform with more services. You can make a business profile, you can make a budget, and so on. But I think the biggest recent strategic decision we made that might be relevant for many of you is that we decided to make GrowthWheel EDMIS compatible for the United States. So that means now that there's a new kid in town, because right now there's only 4 systems that can report to EDMIS, Neosera, Center IC, SourceLink, and Outcome Tracker, and now GrowthWheel would be the 5th. So we are completely redesigning the experience of reporting to EDMIS. This is a soft launch, telling it to you now, and we've been talking about it a little bit, but we're going to soon make an official launch and try to see if we can reinvent the way that you are reporting to the SBA. For other countries, we are on the same path. We are right now designing a system for SBDCs in Norway to report to their government in an easier and simpler way. So that's a very recent strategic choice we made. What are we going to say, Daniela? 6 months ago, I guess, just about 7 months ago, that now we are expanding our product in that direction. That has been 12 years in coming, but now is the time to make that strategic choice. So this is very real, and for the same for your clients. They are facing strategic choices about what products are they going to offer and what are they not.
Yes, and of course, using that product mix decision sheet would be a great way to brainstorm with them about what are those strategic choices they have. But we also have some strategic choices about revenue and pricing that you can look at with your clients.
Yeah, and for us, we charge for certification. We charge for a license every month you use it. We don't charge for prints. You can print for free as much as you want, duplicate the tools. You can actually buy our prints, but we sell them at cost price. We also decided to have a high price point, but we've held it. We haven't changed our price for 12 years, even as we've been expanding the product, but we wanted to make sure we had sufficient funding to invest in the product. So we started high for some. Other things it's a low price, but whatever it is, it makes sure that we could finance our continuous product development. And then we have deep discounts for networks. So someone like Jamaica SBDC, who's now adding another 25 advisors, gets a lower price than someone that comes in as an individual. So deep discounts as soon as you work with large networks, like we do for many of you in Arizona, in Illinois, in Hawaii, certainly Oregon is one of the largest client. I think we have the network with almost 100 advisors on board in Oregon. And also Virginia is large with us with 55 and others. So that has been choices we made. The question is for you. What choices should your clients make about their revenue and pricing models?
And some of the decision sheets your clients may look at would be the revenue model mix. So helping clients think through those different sources of income and how they can combine those, and are they useful? How can that revenue model possibly be used, and what would the potential sales be from that source? Your clients can take a look at price points. So do they want to be the higher price point, the Tiffany's of whatever they are in their industry, or do they want to be the low cost leader? So, I would talk to clients and I'd say, okay, now, imagine a 99-cent hamburger or something. And then I'm like, now imagine a $14 one. So, what does your clients want to be in there? And then also taking a look at those discount policies. So does it make sense to offer discounts as we do with large networks for certain customers? And how would they, is it, quality or quantity or loyalty or or cash discount? What makes sense for your clients? So we can take a look at strategy. When is it needed and when is it not? And I always think this is kind of a funny quote from Mike Tyson. Yes, Mike Tyson, where he says, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And the point is, sometimes it's not worthwhile to have a long-term plan. I think a lot of times, especially when COVID first hit and our clients were in crisis, it isn't worthwhile having a long-term strategy when really you just need those short-term tactics. That's really what's needed is, okay, how do we get through this and help our clients, get to the next week and make sure they're getting payroll and helping them through that. So you don't always have to have a long-term strategy for your clients. So there will be strategic choices throughout your client's life cycle. They're going to change as the company grows. That's just very natural. So more can be made and as they grow and move on. So we can take a look at some of the strategic choices our clients have when they're pre-revenue or in that startup stage. So what was some of those strategic choices that a company might need in those early stages? Well, one might be ownership structure. So who should really be part of that business? Is it just going to be them? Are they going to have a business partner? Do they need investors? So who's going to be part of that? And maybe they can take a look at using a decision sheet such as the ownership distribution. So what does it mean to take in another owner or investor? What's going to be the cost of that stock, and helping clients to think through that in an early stage. But maybe your clients want to take a look at the funding. Do they need to get a line of credit? Are they going to bootstrap it? So what would be some options there? And so you can take a look at something like the, investment catalog, maybe thinking through that. So is the client, do they make the choice to fund themselves? Do they get investors? And how do they work through that as well? And then finally, they might take a look at the branding. So what is the company name? What's their identity? Not just the logo, but really the language that they use and the values that really demonstrates for them. So your clients in an early stage may want to take a look at those options and maybe have a decision sheet such as the brand description. So rather than just work on the name and the logo, it helps them to realize there's many choices for their visual identity, the tone of voice, and the values that branding really communicates off to their clients. So those might be some options. So as a business advisor, you can look at which choices your clients need to make as they're growing. So as your clients are growing, what would be some options that they may want to look at? Well, it could be the future product roadmap. So maybe they want to take a look at that. So they don't start by selling what they have now. I would tell my clients, don't worry about running before you can walk. Just focus on the next sprint to get something done and out that they can really work with. And so another option as they're growing is maybe to just win a niche. So what's the markets? Just take it one at a time and don't worry too much. Maybe a market in your client's backyard or an industry that they're familiar with, and helping them to think through that. Or maybe it's about they may not need to think and worry about their future position and the competition. The competition is going to change before they grow and get there. So they can just focus on doing their own thing and not worry about it. Many things may change before they actually have to face that competition. So really for your clients who are in that early stage, they're growing, the first stage may be, whether to make the decisions now or to make them later. Sometimes your clients, they can cross that bridge when they get to it, but not necessarily now. So we can help our clients to think through choosing what to do, choosing what not to do, and choose when they need to make that decision. So helping them to realize they don't have to cross the bridge before they come to it. And, you can use the 30, 60, 90 days action plan to help them to put those strategic decisions on a timeline, whether it's on paper or it's online for them. So it's a great way to kind of have some of those decisions out there for the future. We know it's coming, just don't need to worry about it so much right now. So maybe we can take a little time out and just think through, are there any examples of strategic choices that your clients are facing right now? And is it useful for your clients to make a list of those? So what are they kind of facing at this point in time? And I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see everybody and see what any comments we may have.
Yeah, we have the first question from Robbie, and actually I'd like you to go back for a second, Elizabeth, to slide number 32, because Robbie is asking again here, what is the difference between a strategic choice and a decision? And yes, Robbie, there isn't really any difference, is there? The only thing is if you decide to call it strategic, because it's all decisions, right? And that's really I think a key insight here, that we like to talk in GrowthWheel about differentiating between the decision and the action. As Elizabeth said, sometimes the reason you can't execute is because there's a decision in the way. Sometimes when a company grows, it's because there's a decision you haven't made that will take you further. For us, we hope it's a good decision. We decided to become ETMIS compatible. Time will tell. But before we made that decision, we couldn't start developing the code and the design and things like that. So I think, Robbie, it's really up to you and the client. Do you think this is a basic operational practical decision? Is it maybe tactical, whatever that means, or is it strategic? The point here is really to identify decisions, and then as you talk about them in your conversation, you may realize, oh, this is actually a really strategic decision. What makes it strategic? Very important, very big, have big consequences, cost a lot of money. Whereas an operational decision is like, yeah, let's buy another color printer. The other one is getting old. That may not be a strategic decision. But if you're going into the printing industry and setting up your own print house, that might be considered strategic. So it doesn't matter too much what we call one or the other. I think the real message that Elizabeth is bringing across here is that we need to focus on the key decisions and list them, put them on a timeline, so we can identify what are those decisions that will make this company grow once decided.
Yeah. And we've got some more comments I see in the chat as well.
Yeah, Bernard says how to restructure debt is a strategic decision for one client. That's a great example, Bernard, right there. So they can choose to, consolidate everything with one bank or one new lender. They can choose not to and have some debt spread out over credit cards, or maybe they can find alternative sources for that. So that's a very good example. And we actually have a decision sheet that is exactly listing the different kinds of debt you have, where you look at the interest, you look at the payback time, so you can get that overview of all your debt. Yeah.
And I think I saw Ivy said, how do you work on a business risk decision for your client?
Yeah, so I think, Ivy, we have a decision sheet that can map out the risks, and maybe you can pull it up, Elizabeth, while I talk a little bit about it. Risk analysis is, in all its simplicity, whether something really bad can happen or it will just be a small damage, and how likely it is. And if something is quite likely and it'll be a huge damage, that's what we call a high risk. So I think that some of the decision making is about de-risking. So what you would want to put, Ivy, on your client's 30, 60, 90-day plan is maybe first of all action step to list the main risks, or to fill out a decision sheet to identify the main risks, and then there will be some different decisions about how to de-risk or carry out some preventive steps. So let's say, for example, one risk for a company is that the owner or manager or CEO gets out of commission. This is something we in GrowthWheel have talked a lot about, how we make our company more resilient and not dependent on one individual, including myself. So right now at every monthly or rather quarterly meeting, we go in and we address how are we progressing in making the company less dependent on me. So that involves a number of decisions, Ivy. For example, some of the things that someone like me is responsible for, how can that be delegated? But not only me, we have our head of software development, Deanna, who recently went on maternity leave for several months. And again, we had to be prepared and make a decision about who's going to take over which part of her responsibilities. So that would be an example of de-risking when it comes to personnel. But another way of de-risking could be to look at software systems. So how can you make sure that your software systems are safe? What decisions does that involve? Are you going to hire a consultant? Are you going to hire a full-time person, or things like that? I hope, Ivy, this answers your question.
Is that good, Ivy? All right. And then with Giovanni, you've got your hand up. I'm going to stop sharing and.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Everybody, really appreciate the discussion so far. Just recently, I have a electronics manufacturing company that I'm working with on GrowthWheel, and I was really thinking about. I realized that strategic management in the MBA sense or in a corporate sense was not necessarily what they needed at the moment, but I realized that they still needed a way to determine the key steps to take in the short term. They've just started. They have a structure. They have merchandise for retail, but their prime products are in development right now, and they're looking for a way to earn. And I've been using the action plan, the 30 to 90 day action plan, but I realized that even because what we've done the assessments, we've been working together in addressing some of the issues, the startup issues that they're having. But I realized that I wasn't so well equipped to help them develop a strategy. As a matter of fact, we help them apply for grant funding, and in the pitch, the funders said to me, they need some help with strategy, and I realized that how can I use GrowthWheel or use the tools to help them develop a strategy? I think that's what's on my mind.
Yeah, so I think what you just said there about using the 30, 60, 90-day action plan, you can tell the difference between working with operations and strategy, that if you just make a 36-90 action plan with all the action steps that are coming in, there's lots to do in any business all the time. You can fill out an action plan very easily. The client can do it themselves, and whenever you have a meeting, all kinds of things come up. Oh, we got to do this and that, and so on. The way to make it strategic, I think, is exactly to focus on the decisions. And how do you figure out what are those decisions? Well, you can actually use the 360 screening for that. So when you go through the 360 screening and you ask clients, are you happy with the current state of your marketing, of your brand, your business processes? And at some point they go like, we're not completely happy with our IT systems. You ask them, why not? Well, the competition have these other things, they have these different things and so on. Okay, so now you have a decision. Are you going to invest in that? Yes or no? Or how are you going to approach maybe a mobile market if you have something that you want to be out on a mobile device? Or maybe when it comes to the board, they're not really happy. They have a choice, a decision to make about who should be on our board that can help carry us into the future as we make decisions. Or it could be about competitors. How are we going to react to that particular competitor? Or something like that. So I think, Giovanni, the 360 screening will help you identify the strategic issues, if you like, the decisions, whether operational or strategic. But if you, in your process with the client, don't go so much into all the action steps, but focus on what has not yet been decided, then already I think you're building a strategy as a set of choices that they're going to make. That's not the strategy. The strategy is when they made the choices. Like GrowthWheel decided, this is our revenue model. This is our markets. This is our key customers, right? And some of those same decisions may be part of your client's strategy.
Okay, I think what I'm understanding is instead of just looking at the operational activities, try and use the 360 tool to get an overview of the critical strategic areas then, and work from there.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
It's really a 360 view on the business, and in the conversation with the client, things are going to come up, right? Either something is not working, that's when you do a status screening, or something is an opportunity. Oh, guess what just happened? This thing happened in the market. We met this person. We got this funding. We got this grant. Now we have an opportunity. And you want to just focus on what are the decisions clients are going to make. You're not going to recommend them what to decide. You're just going to say, this is something you want to decide on before moving on.
Okay. I have one more question.
Yeah.
And this is as a result of GrowthWheel's reactive strategy.
Yeah.
Just define how you guys approach a reactive sales strategy. How does that work for you guys?
Reactive just means we pick up the phone if somebody's calling. We don't call them, if you like.
Okay.
And only because there's only been so much. We are happy with our growth throughout the years. We could have grown more, I'm sure. But there's a limit to how much at any given time that you can grow. And we've been growing, I think, organically. We've not had investors in the company, so we haven't just like went out and take a big leap that way. We've self-financed our growth by my choice. That's another strategic decision right there. Do you want to have investors or not? Right. Taking a loan in the bank is much cheaper. The investor wants much more, and they're more difficult to deal with. I tried it before, so for this business, that was my personal choice as an owner. But there are other choices, and we'll never know if it was the right choice for me, I guess. But that is where what was I getting at?
The reactive sales strategy.
Exactly where we chose to go like that, and that's why there's a limit to how much you can do. So that's why we haven't approached all markets. Even Jamaica, you found us. We didn't find you.
Right.
So that is an example of a reactive sales strategy, which can work really well, right? As soon as clients call you, you can build great relationships. You can grow the relationships. They will be Jamaica is one of our most important clients right now, one of our most important markets. It's just that we didn't act on it. We reacted on it instead. Yeah.
Got you. Thanks.
I notice that Dylan wrote in the chat, isn't strategy determined by the customer? Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. And what would be the implication for this as what we are talking about here, Dylan? I think, some of the choices that relates to customers, by the way, I know your question, of course, is coming out of that everything should be about the customer, right? But then again, not, because everything should also be about the financing. Otherwise, you can't service the customer. And if your team is not working, you can't service the customer. And if you have a lousy product, the customers won't be there anyway. So we always thought customer is king, or cash is king, or anything else is king. It's just not the whole picture. GrowthWheel has always been about the holistic picture. And at any given time in the life cycle, as Elizabeth was showing, there's going to be different things. You can't have one thing that fits all. So it may not always be the customer that determines the strategy, but many times it is. And when it is, what would be some of the strategic choices you have as to your customers? Maybe Dylan, you can answer that yourself.
Well, the reason I ask is because I don't care how well funded a startup is. It could be, I've been dealing with a lot of technology startups lately, and they tend to be generated by, scientists. And they come up with these wonderful ideas that they can make something that produces bubbles or something, whatever. But my first, always, whether they're underfunded or overfunded, I say, who cares? I mean, the bottom line is, if nobody's going to buy it, why do you care? Why?
Right.
And then when they start answering that, it creates a value proposition.
Yes.
And if they don't have a value proposition, they don't need financing.
That's right. That's right. So let's pull up maybe, Elizabeth, our decision sheet about value proposition and just revisit that a little bit, because that's, I think, what we're talking about here. What are the decisions you can make about your value proposition? And by the way, Alex Osterwalder and his company made a great worksheet about a value proposition, the value proposition canvas, that looks at pains and gains and the job to be done. It's actually ideas by Michael Clayton out of Howard University that is some 20 years old, but they popularized it and they made a great visual model. So that is a great tool. We made another one here where we distinguish between product features, product benefits, and product value. Because sometimes, as you know, Dylan, when entrepreneurs talk about their product, they may talk about some technical features, right? These bubbles are, generated from, this kind of chemical or liquid or whatever, right? Well, what's the benefits of that? That you get bigger bubbles, right? What's the real value here? Well, the bigger bubbles is going to make a great party when you have the kids around and they want to see big bubbles, right? Or whatever those bubbles are. You have to tell me. So what we try to do here is to say, well, here's again a decision, maybe strategic, maybe operational, but there's a decision about what is the value you want to provide. So for GrowthWheel, for example, again, to make it real, our ultimate value proposition for business advisors is to make you the best business advisor you can be. That's the outcome. That's what you want to do. It's not that, we have a 360 screening that is in a circle, that is round, that has colors on it. That's a description of the 360 screening. The benefit is that you can get a better overview of your client's strategic decisions, but the real value is that you can be the best business advisor you can be. So that's an example. And of course, we changed our value proposition recently as we are moving into reporting to governments, whether that's in Jamaica or whether it's to admins in the United States. And right now, as it happens, we are working on how we define that value proposition. What's the real, why would you want to report to admins through GrowthWheel? Why don't you stick to what you already have? And what is it that we bring to the table? And we can describe our features. We have some intelligent forums, we have a graphic interface, and so on. But what's the real benefits of that? It's going to be something like faster and easier. But the real value is you're going to love your CRM system. You may not love your CRM system today, but we're going to make it so you're going to love your CRM system. You're going to love to make reporting to the SBA. That's the value. The rest is just benefits and features. So that's an example of, I think, Dylan, where we have a decision that is really determined by the value or a decision about how do you determine your value for the client and distinguishing between these things. And if you mix this up with the business model, value proposition canvas, you really cover both or two different angles to that particular decision.
All right. Well, let's move on. And actually, you were just talking about Alex Osterwalder, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit right now.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and share these slides. And so we're kind of our content, what we were talking about strategy, when is it needed, but we're also going to talk about, clearly one of the key strategic choices your clients have is what is the model that they want to have. So let's take a look at that in GrowthWheel for business model selection. And as David was saying, he was talking about Alex Osterwalder, and so I know some of you use business model canvas, and you can think about these 9 elements really as 9 strategic choices that your clients are making. What is their strategic choice when it comes to their value proposition, as we were just discussing? What's their strategic choice on key partners? And, if you don't remember, you can always take a look at how GrowthWheel works, hand in glove with business model canvas. So, what they call value propositions, we've split into business idea and the product portfolio. We've got customer segments. We call that customer portfolio. Now, what we call revenue model on business model canvas, that's revenue streams and channels. But then we've got customer relationships. That's what we call sales and service. Key resources, we call that employees. We've got key activities, that's partnerships. And we've got key activities with the business processes, and then finally cost structure with our financials. But of course, GrowthWheel has more than just these 9 elements. We have 20 focus areas. So you can see that we have a lot more, I think we're more operational and more detailed. So, if you like to use this creatively exploring the business model for the client using Post-it notes, that's great. We think it's a great way to kind of engage the client there. But then personally, for me, when I was with the Small Business Development Center in Illinois, then I'd have clients say, okay, I've got my model, now what? So, you can still use that 360-degree screening to get focus with the client. Where do they need to focus on right now? And then use those decision sheets. All of these decision sheets, they may represent strategic decisions that your clients need to make. And I always say that they're like brainstorming sessions. When your client's unsure about something, that's when you want to look at those. But thanks to folks at the Arizona SBDC that created this, where they actually mapped out the GrowthWheel tools on business model canvas. So as you dive into the canvas, there are GrowthWheel tools that are going to be there to support you. And really, GrowthWheel is more ideal for, helping to kind of operationalize, and make that action plan. So what are the decisions? What are the actions that the client needs to implement now that they've kind of created that? So kind of thinking through that with GrowthWheel, some companies already found their business model. So for them to focus really about is those strategic choices to make that model work in the best way possible. So GrowthWheel can be used when they're ready to move on to more detailed choices about the business model, whether you're using, again, the 30, 60, 90 plan to put those strategic decisions out there or on a timeline. So there's different ways you can use with business model canvas. And so you can look at any current business model canvas you've made with a client, consider any of the strategic choices that might be facing your clients in any of those 9 elements or areas, and then add those decisions to a 30, 60, 90 plan to really make that much more practical for clients as they kind of want to start implementing that. So we can ask, think about with your clients, first of all, how many of you are using business model canvas still? And would it be useful to your clients to actually map out those strategic choices? So I would love to hear that from all of you. And I'm going to stop sharing there so I can see you.
Well, I use a business model canvas if the client has pretty much launched their idea, and they already have a team in place, and they are focused on technology and probably NSF activity or DOD or something like that, because the NSF recognizes the business model canvas as the modus operandi to follow to commercialize your product. And for businesses that maybe aren't so sophisticated, that need to validate their idea and need to find customers, and maybe don't have a team that's really knows what they're doing. I use the GrowthWheel because, and you should hear what they, oh my goodness, this is great. Now we have something to do, because they had no idea what they were going to do to start a business. So it really depends on the value I can bring to that particular client.
And I think there's a lot of personal preference there. I think the guys from Business Model Canvas would say that you can use it all the way from early startups, and I know they used it with Volkswagen, the car company in Germany. From large corporations to early startups. In fact, I remember I met Osterwalder back at a conference in the United States one time, and we had a conversation where he said that it was actually developed for large corporations, kind of in line with what you say, Dylan. And then he said it was an unexpected positive consequence that it could also be used for startups, because their business model is actually strategizing his company. Their business model is to do consulting for large corporations, right? And that's why they give away the canvas for free for others, because that's not their business model. That's their strategic choice, if you like. Yeah. All right. Any other comments on Business Model Canvas? We have a special webinar just about that you can join or see a recording if you want to dive into using those two tools together.
All right. Well, if not, then let's go ahead and take a look at GrowthWheel for this focus area strategy. So what are the choices that your clients need to make in those different focus areas of the business? And if your client wants to discuss strategy, GrowthWheel is going to have you covered here. So we can talk about lots of examples. And David, maybe you want to pipe in and also share some examples of business concept strategies. So in what we might call the yellow area.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can imagine just to do a vision for a company, right? Just that exercise of imagining the future in a creative way, using different kinds of tools that are suited for that. You could work with your mission, you could work with your stakeholders, you could talk about scalability, you could introduce concepts like 10x. What would it take to 10 double a company as a way of thinking about things? So just that would be a separate strategy. You could call it strategic vision if you like to. And then you could instead just do a product strategy. So just about product. What technologies, what features, what wrapping, what components, what breakdown, what packaging, all that stuff. That could be a strategy of its own. Then, of course, the business model, we just talked about that. We talked about it the way Business Model Canvas defines it. We talk more about business model as what is the specific sources of income and what the Canvas called revenue model. I guess your price plans, your discounts, that could be a strategy of its own. Your entire pricing and revenue streams. And then there's markets. That's also a completely separate strategy. Which markets are you going into, especially if you are in different industries, maybe, where you need to customize your product. If you're selling it retail, through distributors, or whether you're working with the media industry, the food industry, and so on. And of course, if you go international for export, there's a whole lot of decisions about how to do that. And then you could also make a specific competitive strategy or positioning strategy, where you look at all your competitors, you analyze them, you look at their strategic assumptions, you think about what the book Blue Ocean Strategy, the idea that you want to compete by coming up with something that takes you out of the red ocean where everybody's just eating up each other, and you get to the blue ocean where there's nobody like you. So you are kind of out of competition. So you see, just these 5 are so rich that you may want to decide it's too much to do all of those, and ask yourself, maybe you, Giovanni, with your client, which of these 5 strategies do you want to do first? So you just start on decision making in one particular area. We can go to the next one, Elizabeth.
All right. Take a look at those examples of organizational strategies.
Yeah. Some companies may, and that would be the mature ones, look at an exit strategy. Oh, it doesn't have to be a mature one. It could be that you start a company to flip it, right? Let's build this for a year and then find someone who's in a perfect position to acquire it. So now you got to have a strategy for who's the potential buyers, how do we match up to them, how do we manage investor relations. Or maybe if you're growing a company with many employees, you need a recruitment strategy. Where do you recruit? How do you make yourself attractive? How do you get discovered? How do you do retention? How do you have training programs? That's going to be a whole strategy. If you work with partners, let's say you have distributors, and I didn't mention that, but GrowthWheel actually have a number of business partners in a number of countries. We have for the Middle East, we have for Malaysia, we have for Brazil, and some other places. And that in itself could be a whole strategy of how you attract, deal with partners that are sales partners. And of course, on the supply side, what is your supply chain? How do you source? How do you qualify your vendors? Lots of decisions about that. And value chain strategy is your whole business processes. So can you re-engineer, redesign the way your company operates through outsourcing and insourcing? What needs to be in-house? What can be outsourced? All the way from a small business that makes a decision to outsource accounting instead of employing a bookkeeper, maybe even outsourcing sales, outsourcing social media, outsourcing SEO. There can be a whole lot of things you can outsource, and then there's some things you won't. That would be a strategic choice. What do we need to keep inside? Because that's a core competence. And we can move on, Elizabeth.
You bet.
When it comes to customer relations, of course, we got the good old marketing strategy. What are your marketing channels, your marketing mix, your platforms? How do you have customer dialogue? Your sales strategy is about your customer acquisitions, or what is sometimes called go-to-market. What are the things you bring, whether it's a booth, a roll-up, a certain approach to coming in, getting meetings and whatnot. Branding, your identity, PR, your image, your reputation, your public messages, the discussions you involve yourselves in, the conferences you go to. And lastly, for what we could call in the GrowthWheel framework, examples of operations. To the next slide, Elizabeth, is even accounting strategy. That would be Giovanni, where you focus on just performance measurement. In the first session today, we run 2 OnTrack webinars on the day. In the first one, we had a conversation about a tool called Balanced Scorecard. It's basically the idea that don't just look on financials, look at all the factors and the metrics that leads to financial results, and measure that, customer satisfaction, churn, and a lot of other things. And if you really focus on this strategy, there's a whole lot of things you want to measure in the company so you can make sure you're on track. There could be a finance strategy. How do you want to finance yourself? Where's money going to come from? Some lenders say, or investors say, if we're going to lend someone $100,000, we better be prepared to lend them another $1 million. Because if it works with the first 100, they're going to need more as they keep growing. So maybe you need to work with a client on their financing strategy, not only the first round, but the A, B, C, D round, the first, second, third round, whatever you want to call it. Production strategy is about your technology. Should you upgrade your existing technology? It may be a production technology, it may be a software technology. And of course, your facilities. Where's your locations? What is your equipment? What are your retail outlets or virtual offices or whatever your facilities are? So there you have it. 20 different focus area strategies. And now you see why the prospect of making one strategy is pretty overwhelming, right? That's like writing a business plan. That's too much. We would say instead, figure out, what are the most important focus areas, and then start making a focus area strategy by identifying the strategic choices and then move on from there. It could be a combination of one or more, of course, right? The criteria, what's the most important? What can generate the fastest results if we move from here?
Right. So it's really about what choices to make within each strategy. And that's why we like to use that phrase, strategic choices. So love to hear if you've got work with a focus area strategies with your clients at this point.
Yeah. Anybody ever did a marketing strategy or any other strategy?
I'll jump in. Yeah, I wish
Yes,
I had.
please.
I wish I had done this webinar before I started consulting with the clients I have now, because I would have approached a bit different. I know ourselves for arguments for the clients I have now. For one in particular, the strategy. There's a few things we attempted to do over the course of the consulting, but one thing sticks out is that we really wanted to help them map out their organizational strategy. So understand the organizational chart, understand job descriptions, and even understand the investment needed in bringing in new talent. So I can definitely say that that was actually one strategic choice that they needed to make, and through GrowthWheel we were able to get them thinking in a more practical way about approaching those challenges. So I would say organizational strategy.
Right. And see, this is great because a client may come in the door and say, I need a social media strategy. Oh, why? Oh, because social media is so important. And that can get me a lot of new clients if I'm strong in social media. And they may be right. But that's why we want to do the root cause analysis that you remember from the certification course, right? Is it really what you need, or is there something else that is related? And in your case, Giovanni, if the client or you together say, okay, it's going to be the organizational strategy, you're going to see, well, does it relate to anything else? And you gave the answer yourself. Yes, we can only build an organization if we have financing. So we need those two to work together. We need to make those strategic choices at the same time, right? Those are on the 30-day or the sooner list of things to decide. And later on, we'll discuss social media strategy. Later on. First, we need the team in place with the funding, and then we move on from there. That might be a month later, it may be a quarter later, but you kind of sequence things because you can't do everything at once. Anyway.
I have a business that came to me from, originally they started in Colorado and spent about $1 million trying to ramp up, and they have no sales.
Mm-hmm.
And so I immediately put them on GrowthWheel, and we went around the wheel and identified the fact that they have no idea who they're going to sell the stuff to.
Right.
So right now, we're putting together a branding strategy. We're putting together value propositions, customer segments, and they depend on those worksheets to keep them focused. And the same thing, they're a business that started with backwards. Here's a great idea, and the bottom line, who cares? They didn't bother to figure that out. So in those situations where or people are especially focused on themselves, what they want to accomplish, and that they have this wonderful product, this really helps get them focused in reality.
Right. That's great to hear, Dylan. Thank you so much for sharing that. Bernard has a question here. Elizabeth?
Yes, he's saying how to slide into a new target market, changing focus of business from everyday tableware to now high-end pottery.
Yeah. So that is a decision of its own, of course, and it sounds like the client already made the decision, or rather the first decision. Because that's the thing, when you start focusing on decisions instead of actions, it doesn't necessarily become how are we going to do that? What's our to-dos? Now, you made a strategic choice to do that, it sounds, and maybe that's because there's a estimate it's an attractive market. Maybe it's a market that is not so crowded. Maybe it will benefit the existing portfolio of products if you have a higher end product, and so on. So the question really is not how do we do that, but what are the next decisions we need to make that happen. For example, are we going to change our channels to do high-end pottery? Are we going to change our organization in any other way? Are we going to change our brand? So maybe you need to rebrand or have an additional brand. And I can also disclose, for example, for us in branding, we have a history of some changes in our brand. We have some international things about our brand. We are called slightly different things in certain countries. And one of the things we are working on right now is we are going high-end, if you like, Bernard, and making an Edmis-compatible CRM system. So how do we brand that? Do we just call it GrowthWheel again? And we are contemplating, we didn't make a final decision, to call the version of GrowthWheel that can do Edmis reporting, to call it GrowthWheel NG. NG stands for next generation. And that is because the new Edmis is called Edmis NG, next generation. So we will communicate, we think maybe, to our clients very clearly, oh, everybody heard about Edmis NG. And when we rebrand GrowthWheel for SBDCs in the United States as GrowthWheel NG, next generation, then we get the message across that this is exactly what we are. So for you, Bernard, I think, branding would be one of those next decisions. So since you've decided to go into the market, what's the decisions on branding? What's the decisions on channels, marketing, business processes, employees? And again, you can do a screening and say, well, now that we made this choice, what are the implications around the wheel, and focus on that decision making before you go into action mode. Because the decisions are going to direct what it is that then is going to happen.
Paul's got a question here. It says, potential employee ownership is a growing trend. How does GrowthWheel work in employee planning process?
Yeah, so we actually have an advanced tool for that, and maybe you can pull it up, Elizabeth, while I just introduce that a little bit. Oh, sorry, I got it wrong. I thought you said employee ownership. So yeah, we have a tool that we showed earlier in this presentation about deciding who should be the different owners. We didn't actually make many tools specifically for employee ownership. So what we do have is,
yeah, we have organizational structure, and so we do have some things in there that you can kind of see that might be in the insourcing, outsourcing, and I love employee loyalty. That's a really great decision sheet too.
Yeah, I think the one sheet we're missing, and this is the wonderful thing about being in our business, we can continue to get input for how to do this, is the decision sheet about employee ownership. If we were to make a decision sheet about it, would be to look at some of the different ways to do that. Because the problem with ownership is that sometimes it's not really genuine, and the reason is that there's no liquidity event. So you may give employees stock, but who are they going to sell them to? Unless you're going for an IPO, or unless you have a plan to sell the company, there's going to be no liquidity event. And maybe the contracts even say, well, it's only as long as you are an employee that you can retain this ownership, otherwise your stock is going to go. So I think those decision sheets, Paul, would have to go in and say, what is it you want to achieve? What are the alternative things you want to achieve? Is it to retain? Is it to reward? And then what are the alternatives? Because sometimes you might be better off with phantom shares, which is, you may know that term, where employees don't really own any stock, because the stock doesn't get liquid anyway. Well, unless there's a payment of dividend. But what if the majority of the owners think there should be no dividend? Then there's also no real value of these stocks. You also taxed on them. You can't just give people stock. Now you get taxed on something, you don't get the value. It's really complicated. So phantom stocks is where you say, let's.
I understand all that.
Yeah.
There is a big growing trend. I was introduced to this topic about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And I had and the people that introduced me didn't know what they were doing. And all they gave me was platitudes about, well, you got one vote per person over here and you got one vote per dollar over here, and those two don't meet. Well, they do meet if you do some studies and look at the structures they've been using around the country. And there's 2 or 3 organizations that are really good about putting these things together.
Yeah.
And they have planning sessions with the owner on a pretty much traditional transition. And they also have planning sessions for the group that's coming over. And they have some really good structures to do the kinds of stock control and liquidity control that you were just talking about. And I was just wondering if, I knew you got a bunch of tools there. I was wondering if anybody had kind of honed those for the employee process to date.
That would be great to have. And please send any input you have on that. That would be great to really support businesses that want to go through the pros and cons, so they can structure something that is actually real. I mean, if you want to give employees ownership,
I have slide deck on the actual structures they're using.
I'd love to see that.
I will send them to you immediately.
That would be a great advanced tool to develop with someone going through that, because it involves many strategic decisions.
Yes.
How much equity, how much payout, how much dividend, how much influence, is it A stock, B stock, all those are strategic decisions.
Well, actually they've developed their own 2 different kind of ownerships of their own that answer a lot of those questions, and it's cooked into the
right. Exciting
solution. I will send you those.
Yeah.
And anytime you want to talk about them, we can certainly do that.
Right. As it happens, I just got a package the other day from a gardening company, and it said on the box outside, proudly employee-owned company. So there's lots of role models out there. It's called Garden or something. I think it's one of the large gardening companies in the United States.
Dave, when I was younger, I was all over the Midwest
Yeah.
dealing with multi-generational planning.
Mm-hmm.
And those companies are no longer there. Those jobs have gone overseas.
Yeah.
And I realized when I got involved with employee-owned companies that an employee-owned company will not send its job overseas.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting aspect in this time and day. All right, let's move on, Elizabeth.
Yeah, actually, we're kind of running out of time, so I was going to kind of wrap us up because I know we're losing a few folks.
Yeah.
But want to make sure that and make sure if there's any questions. Ivy's got a question: business continuity plan and succession policy. Do we have sheets for this?
Yeah, so we have for succession, we have one of our advanced tools called GrowthWheel for exit and succession, and it's a big one. I think we have 27 or 35 decision sheets just about selling a company.
Yeah.
Whether it's for the owners, a new owner, whether it's for the employees, for an investor, or the next generation in the family. So you can take a look at that. And for all our advanced tools, some of them have a little price tag. They cost $20 a month or something, or 14 or whatever. But you can see a list of content, Ivy, right there on our site. Go to the table of content right there and download it. And then you can decide if it's an add-on that you want to purchase. Yeah. Also, we are working right now on business continuity, which is a whole other topic. And we just ran a webinar recently, Elizabeth, about business continuity, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, and resilience, I think we call it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can revisit that webinar, Ivy, and see the inspiration we have for that. I think we presented one new decision sheet, and we also showed how existing decision sheet can be used for resilience and continuity planning. For example, business processes. If business processes are defined, then when someone is not there, others are able to do that business process. And we showed many other examples of this in that particular OnTrack webinar.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up, thanks for staying with us through this, but don't forget, you can always join us for a fast track recertification. We do them once a month. We have one tomorrow. And then we also will have one in August. We've got one in September. So we will have them rolling through every single month. And it's just a lot of fun to get together and chat with everyone. And of course we have, I think, we really do recommend this, don't we, David?
Yes. We are considering whether it should actually be mandatory as part of getting your certification, that after your certification course, you got to take a recertification for 4 hours. We've heard so many times now that when you read the book a second time, you just pick up all the details. So we highly recommend a free 4-hour fast track recertification on Zoom. It's just like today with great conversations, advice from all over the country and all over the world. So if you can join tomorrow at 12 p.m., we'll look forward to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. And of course we have our OnTrack webinar. So thanks for joining us. We always have them twice a day and lots of different topics that we rotate. And we also have been doing that about every other month, doing what we call a case study session. So our next one is going to be on Friday, August 6th. So if you have a case that you would like to bring, we would love to highlight that. So let us know if you've got a case.
Why don't you bring your case and we will discuss it with a group of advisors so you get feedback from the world.
I was just thinking about it. I'll talk to you guys when we finish.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds great. And if you ever get stuck, use the GrowthWheel hotline, support@growthwheel.com, or you can use that chat. So, or you can always have an individual session, either with me, with David, just a short touch base, anything like that. But thanks so much, everybody, for being with us here. And we really want to help you be the best business advisor you can be. And GrowthWheel and these conversations are just a framework, and we want you to add your own expertise to that. But thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon again.